You're watching Force 13's live streaming service. This is Force 13 Live. We're again looking at Tropical Storm Isaias right now. It has weakened, as we were expecting. But look at that massive blow-up of convection in the last few hours over what was a rather empty centre of circulation that had emerged off Andros Island earlier today. So, still fighting is this storm as it approaches the coast of Florida, and it still could have hurricane force winds by the time it gets there, along with a potentially dangerous storm surge. My name is Nathan Foy. I'm joined by our team as ever in this hour, consisting of Elliot, Isaac, Alan, Codemo, Michael, Cesar, and Strad. Good evening to you all.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Nice to see you once again, and to everyone watching, and I'm sure we'll get down to the nitty and gritty of this storm. It's not the only storm that's active around the world today. There are 3 active right now. In the Western Pacific, there's 2 others, Tropical Storm Sinlaku and Hagapit, which are affecting Vietnam and eventually Japan and China in the end. But the main focus is still Tropical Storm Isaias right now. 70 mile an hour winds, a pressure of 993 from the National Hurricane Center. Let's start with Mike today, because you're in Florida right now, and we didn't hear from you on this morning's stream. So how are things going there?
Things are, well, originally 24 hours ago we thought that the storm was going to have little to no effect in our area. Now we're thinking that the storm could possibly affect their area, but not nearly as much as we were expecting, of course, last week, when the NHC forecast had it going up the west coast. Now, of course, it's scheduled to skim the east coast of Florida. However, with this storm encountering some shear and dry air, it has been prohibiting it from strengthening, which therefore, as the NHC, and I'm sure all of you know, that it's going to trend more to the west the weaker it gets. So it's definitely something to keep an eye on in my area. I am in the Tampa Bay area, to be exact. We could experience, according to my local forecast, we could experience gusts up to 30 miles an hour. And I expect that could change depending on whether it shifts east or west. I am leaning more to where it's going to shift more west. However, we'll see at the 11 p.m. advisory.
Well, the National Hurricane Center did acknowledge that westward jog as it moved over northern Andros Island. Now it would appear that it's moving back northwestwards, and that massive flare-up of convection over the storm right now, some models had it down as happening a few hours ago, a little bit late, but it's happening now nonetheless. So it's starting to look as though, to me, that this storm could be holding close to hurricane intensity for the rest of its duration until landfall in South or North Carolina. What do we think about that?
It's definitely a possibility. I mean, it was starting to look a little bit grim for the system just in the past 24 hours, but I'm quite surprised with it, actually. It's really starting to make up its ground.
I mean, it's got a lot of headwinds facing the near future still. It's still an environment of 20 to 30 knots of wind shear and has been struggling to fight off dry air. But if it keeps this burst of intensity and doesn't move inland over Florida, and that's still a very close call right now, you could see this try to maintain near hurricane or at hurricane strength as it rides up the coastline towards the Carolinas.
Really,
and that is generally
up.
what's forecast right now.
Let's take a look at the radar imagery as well. This is the edge of the storm now, and you can see there what looks like somewhere near the center. Quite hard to spot the rotation really on that to where the center actually is, but a lot of sporadic showers off towards its west in the bands that are affecting Florida, and you can see further inland there you've got some more intriguing rain accumulations at the moment. I was just wondering what that blue polygon was. Of course, that's a tropical storm warning for Lake Okeechobee, where there's quite a bit of rainfall right now up towards Port St. Lucie. Also, you can see again a few little spots here and there that are moving in from the east that might affect the Miami area, but it looks like they're going more towards Homestead at the minute, which has had a little bit of rain already and a few showers bubbling up across the Everglades. But that's pretty much your snapshot of the storm right now. Tropical storm, 70-mile-an-hour winds. It's only 5 miles per hour less than it was earlier today. Although, well, at its peak, of course, it was a little bit stronger than that at 85 miles per hour. But it's still a powerful storm. 70-mile-an-hour winds can be lethal. And it could still deliver a storm surge. And we're looking more at the rainfall possibilities, because some areas we're now indicating could get over 8 inches of rain perhaps along the coast.
Yeah, that forecast for the potential rainfall totals is shifting slightly west towards more areas along the very eastern Florida central coast, potentially getting 4 to 6 inches, up to 8 locally at parts close to the southern end of central Florida. So definitely something to monitor. Then also a rain threat further up the coastline too. The latest Weather Prediction Center forecast is showing a wide swath of potentially 4 to 6 inches of rain in a relatively short time span from South Carolina all the way up to Massachusetts right now. So even though the storm on the forecast, kind of as you see on screen, will be moving very quickly as it goes up the eastern seaboard past the Carolinas into the northeast and becoming post-tropical as well, there's still going to be a very significant rainfall threat, especially if you're in that area where there's 4 to 6 inches forecast and you get some of that coming down really quickly, raises a concern for flash flooding.
What are you feeling on this strat for your area then?
Well, the rain forecast for my area is significantly higher than I assumed it was going to be yesterday. You know, we were looking at 1 to 2 or 3 inches of rain here, and that's been up to a consistent range of 4 to 6 inches for my area in southwest Connecticut, along with that large swath. And I don't know if you can bring it up, but I'll get it up on a screen share in a moment. So at least for us, fortunately, we live more on a hill, but people around us are going to have to be preparing in general for the threat of flash flooding if you get a lot of that rain coming down very quickly.
Wow.
There you can see earlier on, this is the National Hurricane Center's graphic. A lot of areas along the Florida East Coast now creeping into the 4-inch range. And that wasn't the case earlier on today. And a continuous line of 4 inches plus extending from South Carolina, a potential landfall zone. It is in this forecast at least, all the way through North Carolina, Virginia, Maryland, part of Delaware, Pennsylvania, New Jersey, all the way up to western Massachusetts.
That's right, and well, it's a reminder of those places that they have really hard times when a hurricane comes to their places. And of course, Isaias during the passing of the days is going to increase its size, is going to accelerate more, and of course, the wind field of tropical storm force winds is going to increase as well. So the threat is absolutely going to increase too. The rain is going to be an issue as well. Flash floodings could occur once Isaias starts to crossing the Carolinas states.
Now, Isaac, you've been watching the radar closely. What are your observations about the storm's progression throughout the day? Has it been as bad as it looked?
Well, I will say it earlier. It did. When it passed over the northern part of Andros Island, the Bahamas, there, it looked not really that good on radar, to tell the truth. But now in the recent frames, it's trying to build back that northern eyewall there with that new burst of convection north of the center there. So time remains to be seen if it decides to ramp back up again in intensity. I know earlier it was really fighting off that dry air and wind shear, but now that it's over the Gulf Stream, or about to be over the Gulf Stream shortly here, if it isn't already, there's a possibility for it to re-intensify here, like the National Hurricane Center is forecasting it to do. So that's what it looks like on radar right now. Unfortunately, we lost radar for Long Island, Bahamas, I'm assuming due to a strong outer band. So we only have Nassau radar at this point in time for the Bahamas.
And on the other side, I'm showing the radar from Miami, and you can see the latest on our screen in terms of rainfall for the southern half of Florida, of the peninsula. let's see if we can speak to, who haven't we spoken to yet? Elliot, you're also here. You're tracking recon again tonight?
I am indeed tracking recon.
And what?
And
Go ahead.
the NOAA plane does seem to actually have found an extrapolated pressure of 986 millibars
Oh my.
in Isaias. Oh my gosh.
Oh dear,
But
that didn't go so well.
And that is with 30 knot flight level winds. So we'll see
Wow.
what the drop zone finds for that one. But
Is that the Orion on NOAA or the Gulfstream NOAA?
it's NOAA 3, but
Okay, that's the Orion.
okay. But yeah, this could be an indication that it is indeed re-strengthening.
Oh, it clearly is on the satellite imagery.
And in the infrared, it's also showing that
And the
many
infrared.
high 80s. There's many high 80s currently going on in the new block of convection. So yeah, we should monitor that. And there's also a few thunderstorms, like in the line going southeast. I mean, from the Andrews Islands. So we should still monitor that. Mainly for the Bahamas, because we can still see some damage for the Bahamas.
Yeah, you might want to put that phone away as well. But some sloppy convection on the eastern side of the storm in the bands, and the moisture associated with Isaias. I nearly did it again as well. Elliot's got me into making the mistake now. And the bands on the northern side pushing almost towards the Outer Banks already here.
Yeah, and if they get to this early right now, and they're getting pretty close, you're going to see a little bit at least, elevated rainfall totals prior to the storm actually making its closest approach to land, at least for the Carolinas. And if it re-strengthens a little bit, it is definitely going to be a concern for potential hurricane landfall in parts of the Carolina coastline. That can't be ruled out yet, although it's currently forecast to be a strong tropical storm at its closest approach to the Carolinas.
Now, as you can see on this wide shot on the very far eastern side where we've been tracking Tropical Depression 10, that's really withered away. There's nothing left of it now. But in the middle of the two, you've got an area of interest that the National Hurricane Center are fairly keen on, more keen than I personally am. How's it looking, and what do you think of its chances?
I mean, I think right now it's looking pretty well. I mean, in the past 24 hours on that satellite loop, it's definitely improved. But as the National Hurricane Center gives it, in the next 2 days, it only has a 20% chance. So, yeah, it's not looking like it will most likely form. Who knows? Things do change. But with the full 5 days, they are giving it a 60% chance.
A few days ago, the models were pretty keen on the system developing round about now, but it's been put back, and I'm not sure whether it will, personally. But maybe you'll get a depression out of it and maybe a brief tropical storm. It doesn't look like it's going to affect any land areas, apart from maybe an outside chance of it affecting Bermuda. I'm not sure if you guys agree with that.
What would you give it, Nathan?
There's a hard
20%.
Yeah,
Slight chance that Bermuda could be affected by that system in case that, of course, increases its organization and eventually becomes a tropical cyclone if the conditions are good for the system. But, well, it's very early to say that's what's going to happen. Some models said that it's going to like stall a little bit before doing a sharp turn to the northeast. So
Maybe.
this is way too far. But right now, well, it has some chances. Well, let's see. It's a pretty active hurricane season so far.
Yeah.
And,
yeah.
well, nothing could be ruled out.
Let's just go on a whistle-stop tour around the world, unless you've got some news.
Yeah, I've got something to say about this AOI that could form. I think the most dangerous things about this kinds of storms is the high tides that are coming to the continental U.S. We all know how those beige storms in the open Atlantic sometimes send very high tides, and sometimes they do get lives. For example, a few in North Carolina and places like that. we still have to remember. I think it was last year that Lorenzo actually sent high tides, and we all know how easterly that was. And those high tides killed 2 people in North Carolina. So we still have to take a look at those high tides.
Now, it's a little early to be looking at impacts for there, but the new tropical weather outlook does actually seem to have it at 30% chance over the next 2 days and a 60% chance over the next 5 days. So increased its 2-day
they've
chance.
gone and updated that. Is that for the 8 p.m.?
That is for the 8 p.m.
That's
very
45
early.
minutes early.
Wow. 45. Yeah, and there's also something. Yeah, I mean rip currents, not high tides. My bad. And also another thing for Isaias. Actually, the bands are so big. There's a somewhat big area of convection. Part of one of the bands that is currently affecting Hispaniola, mainly in the border between República Dominicana and Haiti. Which is generating a very, compact thunderstorm. So if anything,
that's actually happening right now.
Yeah, there's actually a band covering down.
Yeah, and it's actually relatively strong. It's probably in the high 70s, I would say right now.
Is it? Can't tell on the visible. But let's just take a little look around the world then. The Eastern Pacific isn't looking particularly healthy today. Not much going on. A lot of disturbances, but nothing organised. The Western Pacific is where it's at, really. You've got 2 tropical cyclones there now after a whole month of inactivity. Tropical Storm Sinlaku is just about making landfall in Vietnam right now on the very far left-hand edge of your screen. It looks like it's about an hour away from landfall. And you've also got Tropical Storm Hagapit, which is continuing northwestwards. It's getting some organisation going as well. It might be more than just the 40 miles per hour at this point. And the GFS is calling for the storm to get up to about 50-60 miles an hour before moving into China, so that's something to watch out for out east. But that's everything really, and obviously the main threat still at this time is in the Atlantic. So let's see what else. Oh yes, someone asked for computer models just before, and I will get that up for you shortly.
Yeah, and also something I also have to say for Simlaku. I don't know if many of you remember. I think Typhoon Hope. I think it was that actually moved and survived quite a bit of time inland. So a lot of models are not a lot of them, but some models are actually indicating that this could do what Hope did and survive quite a bit, and some even take it out into the Bay of Bengal.
Wow, I mean. Something to point out about Sinlaku is just how massive it is. Like, it's quite surprising, to be honest.
I believe it's caught up in a monsoon, too, so that's what contributed to its large area of influence there.
Wow.
Yeah, my bad. Go on.
Nathan, just a quick update. Recon just made another pass through the center of the storm. They had extrapolated a sea level pressure, I believe, of 993 millibars and a surface level wind of let me just confirm that is 65 knots. That is the surface level wind.
Very interesting. And also something else I have to say about Sinlaku. I think the biggest it got just before making landfall in Hainan was about 1,200 kilometers wide.
Made landfall already?
It's about to.
Oh.
So we've got the model spread on our screen now on the right hand side, and you can see there's a few that you can discount, like the ones on the edges. TCLP has been saying that for ages, and TABD I think is a bit too optimistic in the recurve. But you go somewhere in the middle of those and you end up with the storm hugging the coast of Florida really for the next 24, 48 hours even. A bit like Matthew, I suppose, in that regard. Won't be as strong. And then bouncing off the coast of Georgia and then into probably the coast of South Carolina near the border with North Carolina. So it's very similar to Matthew in that part of the track, not the intensity. And then pushing up through the northeast at which point it will turn post-tropical, as we saw in the National Hurricane Center's forecast. The models do diverge rather radically towards the end of that run. So by the time the storm gets to, say, New York, the jury's still out on where it might go after that.
Yeah, and the exact location is going to matter a lot in terms of some of the impacts when we're talking about rainfall. And again, that's why the cone of uncertainty exists. But at least for the rainfall threat, which is going to be the largest concern once you get further north where that uncertainty rises, the exact position is going to matter quite a lot because the models are indicating that the strongest rainfall as it gets picked up by this trough that's going to steer it to the northeast is going to be on the northwestern side of the system. So the further inland the system moves, the further west you could potentially expect that band of heavier rainfall totals to be, and the further offshore it stays or further east it goes while trying to hug the coast, the further east you might expect some of those higher rainfall totals to be. So we do have to watch and monitor that, particularly for the higher uncertainty zones once we get up towards the northeastern United States for the time being.
Yeah.
Any other comments on the rainfall?
I mean, yeah, it's something definitely, as we've been saying since this thing first started, something to be watching out for if you're in the area of uncertainty or even a little bit past it, because who knows, really? It's best to be prepared rather than not. It's best to have your supplies ready and be ready for your area, especially if it's prone to flooding.
Wow.
Exactly. This is going to be a good time since the storm is not. It could have been a lot worse in many regards here. So this is, I guess, kind of a way to prepare yourself for if any bigger storms come in later this season. This is a storm to prepare, to make sure you have all your preparations ready. You have everything ready to go in case worst comes to worst and you have to hunker down with this storm. This is just a good time to review your hurricane preparations and hurricane plans at this time, is what this is helping you guys do.
And that's completely right. And just one more note about the rainfall totals, especially once you get up northeast in the United States where there's still more uncertainty. Showing 4 to 6 inches of rain in parts of New York right now, New Jersey, that's going to be occurring in an overall short time span, because if you look at the track cone, they're expecting it to move from Virginia in terms of latitude on 2 p.m. on Tuesday to the next day all the way up to Maine. So a lot of that's going to be occurring within a relatively short time span as the storm's moving relatively quickly at that point in time. So, that could lead to potentially significant rainfall totals.
Flash flooding.
With rain rates of 1 to 2 inches an hour occurring potentially. Yeah, exactly. Within an hour. So stay on guard for flash flooding if you're looking at locally higher amounts in the region.
Yeah. I saw a comment. Well, a question.
Yeah, let's go to questions now.
Someone asked if we can show the spaghetti model. If you
yeah,
can,
we
please.
did. And we'll show it again a little bit later. But
And
start your message with Force 13 all in text if you have a question for us on the air right now. I don't know how long we'll be here for tonight. At least the hour. Maybe we'll push to 2 if whether we've got a lot of questions coming in. But we're left with the radar here on the screen out of Miami, and you can see the northern side of the storm quite clearly. Struggling a little bit with the rotation. You get that a little bit better on Isaac's screen from the Bahamas. But what you can see more of here are just the isolated rain showers that are approaching the southeastern part of Florida, and the more broader bands that are moving through towards the central part there over Lake Okeechobee towards the Everglades region and Marco Island.
I saw a question. Go.
Yeah, I saw a question that I don't quite know how to answer. They ask where will there be more winds, the east or the west? Where do you think there are
of
be
the
more
storm?
Winds? I'm uncertain. Yes.
North and east.
Yeah, north and east. Yeah.
Yeah, northern hemisphere cyclones typically have their strongest winds associated on the northern half of the system, and then usually on the northeastern quadrants where you see the peak winds. But again, like we talked about a little bit earlier, as the storm rides up the eastern seaboard, either inland or very close to the shore, models are forecasting at the moment that the strongest rainfall, and when you get further up the eastern seaboard, that's going to be significantly the largest threat, could potentially be located on the northwestern quadrant of the system, similar at least in terms of what side of the storm is having the most activity, to what we saw with Faye as it moved inland. So keep an eye out for both sides of the system, really, and keep in mind that impacts from a tropical cyclone extend significantly far away from the center, especially when you're going to have a storm that will likely be expanding in at least its rain field as it moves northward and turns post-tropical.
Do we have any word on the CDPS score for the storm right now?
Well, Devon has
I believe it's a 3 on the CDPS.
Yeah,
It
Devon
was
has
earlier.
well, on the latest update in Spanish, Devon told me to put it as 3, so I would assume it's still
Stage
3.
3. So, Strat, do you want to talk a bit more about Stage 3 storms?
Yeah, I mean, it's a custom scale made through an algorithm to determine the potential threat that a cyclone may have to land using rainfall, wind speeds, and the size of tropical storm force and hurricane force winds. So it tries to take into consideration all sorts of things, because there's a lot more to a hurricane or tropical storm than just its wind speed. As you know, 90% of the deaths from tropical cyclones do occur from rainfall. A stage 3 right now is still a very dangerous storm. Significant to extensive damage would be possible in the exact impact zones. And we've seen if you get those locally higher amounts of rainfall, that very significant damage can occur, like we've seen occur in parts of Puerto Rico and Hispaniola already, and potentially even parts of the Bahamas, as some of those images and videos start to trickle in. So just because you don't see it up at the very upper echelons of the scale, up at like a 9 or a 10, does not discount the potential danger to land that this system brings.
Of course. Now, wasn't it, it's a stage 3, and wasn't it a graphic earlier that Devon put out? Well, I think it was experimental, but I think it called for 11 inches of rain maximum, was it?
Yes, and
The very
and
maximum.
the side silver showed 6.6 points.
Yeah, and I think something like projected damages of 180 million or something like that.
Yeah, I also saw that. Here's another question.
That's just based on the algorithm, though. It could be completely different.
Yeah. Here's another question. Will it hit Coral Gables? Well, landfall is very unlikely, but there could definitely be some storm surge and a lot of rainfall in the area. So better be prepared. Even if it doesn't make landfall, storm surge is still most probably going to happen.
Yeah,
Clap Ryan phrases it interestingly. How will North Carolina affect Isaias?
I think it'll definitely do a little bit of weakening to the storm, as it is, of course, over land. It's really hard to tell, though, at this current stage.
Yeah, I mean, generally land interaction will weaken a tropical cyclone, unless you see something extraordinarily rare, kind of what we saw in some ways with this storm a couple days ago with its interaction with Hispaniola, to be fair at least. But notably, as it's going to move northeast and over land, having it out of the Gulf Stream over land will almost certainly weaken the system substantially, at least in the short term. But because it isn't already an extremely powerful hurricane, and as it moves northeast and turns post-tropical, there's going to be some baroclinic forcing interacting with the system. It won't rapidly weaken, say, from 70 miles an hour to 30 miles an hour within 24 hours just because it's over land.
The best I've seen the computer models offer so far is that it's from now on, it's probably going to be pumping out these big bursts of convection all the way around the coast of Florida, curving over towards South and North Carolina, and probably a secondary peak of 70 miles an hour along the coast of South and North Carolina. That's the best guess at the moment, I would say. I'm not sold on it reaching hurricane status tonight. That's what the National Hurricane Center is saying, overnight tonight. I'm not convinced, but that blow-up, you never know. It could get back to hurricane status. There's not much difference between it right now. 70 and 75 miles an hour. You're still expecting a significant impact if you're prone to winds, and you'll still get a significant storm surge, especially for those low-lying coastlines, up to 4 or 5 feet.
Yeah, I remember, I think it was Tropical Storm, I think it was Faye in 2018, I want to say. That made landfall
2008.
2008.
Or, Gordon in 2018 made landfall as a 70, I believe it was a 70 mile an hour tropical storm, a high-end tropical storm, and even seeing a video off of that looked quite scary. So even a high-end tropical storm is nothing to take lightly here if we're in the path of it.
Stonewall is also a really good example of how storm surge can be pretty
Very
pretty
dangerous.
damaging. Even if the storm's not necessarily a hurricane, it's still really important to pay attention to impact, especially if you're in low-lying areas.
Yeah, we're talking about portions of the Florida coastline that are much more kind of atoll-style island extensions, kind of like the barrier islands in Texas. And, another example would be some of those more coastal low-lying island chains in New Jersey as well, along with the Outer Banks of North Carolina. So for those particular areas, even only a couple feet of storm surge can be extremely disruptive and damaging. We saw with Hannah some of the damages it did in southern Texas on some of those more low-lying island chains, completely ripping off some piers near the
And even in
Corpus Christi
Corpus.
area.
Yeah, even in
exactly.
Corpus, we were about 60 miles away from the eye of the storm, and we got 4 to 6 feet of storm surge, which was quite damaging for our coastlines here. And of course, you saw a lot of people probably saw the footage of Bob Hall Pier, the front half of it being heavily damaged by the storm surge from the hurricane. So even if you're not in the exact center and you're along the immediate coastline, you still need to take this seriously. I mean, it doesn't take you to be in the eye or the eye wall to be affected by the storm.
Gotta say, this convective blow-up is pretty mesmerizing on the visible imagery right now. It's almost like there's two sides that are blowing up together there and intersecting each other. You can see sort of like a little X pattern towards the very center of that blow-up, if you look carefully. What I first noticed, though, is that the cloud tops are now fully over the center of the storm once again. So that's a sign that the storm has got back on its feet. After having an exposed center of circulation earlier on and really didn't look very impressive at all. But now this blow-up is really significant and sustained, and we'll see if it continues to sustain throughout the night.
Yeah, and a couple questions I want to go over really quick as well, just for potential land areas. Someone's asking, what could Grand Bahama still expect right now with the convection ramping up again?
Yes, because Grand Bahama hasn't seen the worst of this yet, probably.
No. I mean, they're still under a hurricane warning and likely will be for at least another 12 hours. So if you're there watching this, make sure that you're staying up to date with everything your local officials are saying to your exact location to stay safe. You could still see hurricane conditions. They have the warning there for a reason. There was questions about whether or not a landfall could occur in Broward County in Florida. It's forecast to get very close on the cone, but it's going to be, based more on exactly, will this go a couple miles west of forecast? Will it go a couple miles east or stay exactly on the line? You need to deviate west still to have a landfall occur in Florida at this time.
Broward County, though, that's the one north of Miami-Dade, isn't it?
Yes, it is the one
north of Miami-Dade. It's around Fort Lauderdale.
It's not going to make landfall there.
It's Hollywood, Fort Lauderdale.
But you could get tropical storm conditions, because that's why there's a tropical storm warning.
If you're under a warning or watch, make sure that you're especially if you're under a warning, make sure your preparations are complete imminently or already complete, and that you're staying up to date with your local officials for the latest information to stay safe. And another question about Florida as well. Someone's asking about Ocala in Florida, which is close to it's up in the Central Peninsula, but significantly inland. Some rainfall totals are still possible there, up to 1 or isolated 2 inches at maximum, but odds of tropical storm force winds there are relatively low. I presume under 10% as the latest National Hurricane Center update.
Well, you can see down the bottom of the screen, we're scrolling through most of the places that will be affected in the next 3 days. If you don't see your location listed, then the chances of significant impacts are very low for you in the next 3 days. It goes as far as Norfolk, Virginia, I believe, in terms of latitude. So you can see them all scrolling by. Most of them are Florida. And you can see the rainfall estimates along with the wind speed probabilities according to the latest National Hurricane Center's update. That was the 5 p.m. and they will be updating again for the 8 p.m. advisory pretty soon. So we'll stay tuned for that one and see what they come up with. I think they'll stay at this intensity, 70 miles an hour, 993.
Yeah, another question I'm seeing is, could it make rapid intensification once it's in the Gulf Stream?
Yes.
I mean,
it could, but I don't think it will.
It could, but
it depends with the conditions in the atmosphere as well. The wind shear is still pretty moderate to high levels, and it's not decreasing so far. But still, Isaias has been really doing good, maintaining its intensity even with all the shear and dry air surrounding that storm.
Yeah, I mean, its best chance for intensification will really be between its closest approach to Florida, in between that time period and when it moves towards the Carolina coastline, just because the wind shear is going to be lessening as it moves more in line with the upper level and mid-level winds, and it'll still be over the Gulf Stream at that time. But statistically, if you're talking about rapid intensification, which is 25 knots within 24 hours, that's extremely unlikely, although you could see some marginal intensification that could maintain this around strong tropical storm or minimal hurricane strength as it moves inland over South Carolina or North Carolina, and that's still a very dangerous storm.
Now, you hear us talking a lot about wind shear, and we've got plenty of questions regarding it and why it's important in relation to a storm, the make or break sometimes of a tropical cyclone. Who wants to explain that and its current conditions?
Well, at this point, oh, go ahead, Scott.
You got it, Isaac. You got it.
Oh, I was gonna say. I mean, it seems that the storm is so far it's been really tricky to forecast, and I'm sure it's given all the National Hurricane Center forecasts a headache at this point in time. It's been really
from start
hard
to
forecast.
finish so far.
Yeah, first we thought it was going to be a little bit weaker, then we thought it was going to be a little bit stronger, and then now it's getting weaker again, and then but the National Hurricane Center is thinking it's going to reach hurricane status yet again. It's quite a tricky forecast, but I will say, now that it's moving over those warmer waters, it could take full advantage of that. It can at this point, and it seems to be trying to do that at this point in time as the sun sets, and blow up that new burst of convection to the north of the center. So if that center gets over if the center goes over that really deep burst of convection, then I could definitely see what the National Hurricane Center is forecasting. I could definitely see it try to become a Category 1 for maybe the last time in its life here.
And let's just look at those sea surface temperatures again for those who haven't seen these before. I know it's quite hard to look close in on where the storm is right now, but along the Florida East Coast, you're looking at about 28, 29 degree waters, and that extends all the way up to the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Western coast of Florida is even warmer, by the way, 30 degrees pushing up there, but the storm's staying on the Atlantic side exclusively, it would appear. So still fairly warm waters, and that will extend for a good 3 days or so of the storm's life. The main barrier will be, well, the sea surface temperatures will be the least biggest barrier. Let's just put it that way. You've got the other features that interfere with the storm, the shear, as we spoke about, the dry air, and of course the land itself. Looking at the sea surface temperature anomalies, though, you can see it is actually in a slight cool pool in terms of the anomalies right now. Over the northern Bahamas, it's about half a degree to maybe 1 degree below average. Still warm, but then as it moves up towards the towards Georgia, towards the Carolinas, you're looking at 2, 3, maybe even 4 degrees above average along the coast. So that could be essential for a storm, and you see so many storms approaching that area that weaken just before landfall. This would favor less weakening before landfall if it did become strong again.
Yeah, another question I'm saying that it's very important. If the storm turns more north, will the wind shears help it since it's another direction plus the Gulf Stream?
The best answer to that question is you got to look at what's picking up and moving it away. I don't know if we can pull up some of the upper level flows from computer models on stream right now, but the best way to explain it, and someone put a good analogy for it earlier, is wind shears. Imagine you're driving, really fast on a highway, and then you stick your head out the window and get absolutely yoinked backwards. So wind shear is upper level winds that are going in not the same direction as the movement or direction of the storm at the time it's going at. So this system's moving northwest right now, and you have shear coming out from the opposite direction, and that's cutting across it, and it basically tries to split convection and symmetry and organization away from the center of circulation, and that's obviously a detriment to a tropical cyclone that's facing those conditions.
Isaac, you're showing us this map.
Oh yes, I was just looking at, while you guys were talking, I was just looking at the wind shear map. This is not the most accurate graph to, or graphic, I mean, to depict wind shear, but it gives you the basic bare bones of what's going on with the storm right now, and you can see it's right about in the area of 15 to 20 knots of wind shear, which, as you can see, well, actually, I don't think you can see, but on the bottom, the green means favorable wind shear for the system, yellow means neutral wind shear for the system, and what I mean by neutral, that means like it's favorable enough for the storm to maintain its intensity, but not strengthen, but also not weaken. And then red, of course, means unfavorable wind shear, which of course weakens storms. And it's like right on the border between favorable and neutral.
In the simplest of terms, pretend that you're the storm. Green is good and red is bad. That's all you need to know on that graphic.
Yeah, it's like a stoplight. It's pretty much like a stoplight.
I'm a very simple person, so that really helps me a lot.
It's like a stoplight. Green is go, yellow is okay. You need to stop soon, and then red is like you need to stop.
Perhaps.
Yeah. In other news, Tropical Depression 10, convection has officially dissipated. There's just one spot with like 20 tops, but it's literally tiny. So yeah, it's safe to assume that convection for TD10 has completely dissipated.
It's gone, but it won't be official until later. The update's out from the National Hurricane Center, 8 p.m. Eastern advisory. No changes to the winds, 70 miles an hour, 993 millibars, and the hurricane warning has been discontinued for Eleuthera, New Providence, Andros Island, and the Abacos Islands. So a hurricane warning is now in effect for Bimini, the Berry Islands, and Grand Bahama only. And, of course, the coast of Florida from Boca Raton to the Volusia-Flagler County line.
Yeah. And just what I was saying about TD10, infrared shows literally no convection. So, yeah.
I mean, it wasn't expected to do much.
Yeah, but it's just over. It was such a small storm. It was like a baby.
I mean, it's kind of impressive that it even was able to form on the coast. Like,
yeah. This was like quite an anomaly. Florence was a tropical storm when it made landfall in Cape Verde, right?
Remember Hurricane Fred in 2015? And I think it was in 2015.
Yes, it was.
Yeah, made landfall as a Category 1 directly over Cape Verde Islands. And Cape Verde? Yes, Cape Verde. And, well, it's something that we don't see usually. Tropical Depression 10 formed really, really close to the coast of Africa, and then made a very sharp turn to the north, something that usually is not seen when a tropical wave comes from the west coast of Africa. Absolutely.
We've got a pile of questions here, Cesar, if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure.
Let's go ahead with this. Could it stall and rapidly intensify? Well, the two don't really go together.
It's really difficult to say because when a hurricane stalls, and usually it starts to weakening because by some point the hurricane has absorbed all the humidity and the heat surrounding him. So by this, I don't think so. That's going to be a possibility, and we don't, and of course we don't want to as well.
A good example of that is for a storm that stalls over warm water and weakens because it stays over the same area. Would be Hurricane Blanca in 2015, and of course Typhoon Trami in 2018. If you guys were tracking storms back then,
we can discuss,
and even Dorian.
Hurricane Dorian.
That's just what I was thinking about. Dorian stalled just north of the.
Dorian was just excruciating. Because it kept moving at 8 miles an hour, which is not too slow, but is still extremely slow. Still enough for it to maintain its intensity. It was ludicrous. This isn't a Dorian, and it's not ever going to be one. I can assure you of that at this point. More questions. What is stopping Isaias from strengthening before landfall in the Carolinas?
Wind shear and
There's going to be a couple of factors again. of course, the wind shear, which we've talked about, and then you're also going to have potential land interaction. If this stays a bit on the western end of the current envelope from the National Hurricane Center on their forecast points, it could be inland over Florida. Even though it's not a very powerful system in terms of wind speeds, it's still a strong tropical storm, of course, but it isn't a major hurricane per se. Moving over land will still be an inhibitor for it. It won't have its center over warm waters in the Gulf Stream, trying to suck up some extra energy to keep it really going. Wind chill will be more favorable again when it turns towards the northeast briefly before it makes potential landfall in the Carolinas. But land interaction, some dry air entrailment, and its current structure will likely limit it from intensifying too significantly, although again, some marginal re-intensification is possible.
Isaac, what's going on with that radar?
Well, it's moving away from the Nassau radar. It's kind of at like a crossroads here between the Miami and Nassau radar, so it's not going to get the best view here. And unfortunately, we lost the Long Island, Bahamas radar earlier this morning. Unfortunately, I'm assuming due to a strong outer band. But on this radar, it appears to have slowed down a little bit on radar by the looks of it. It's kind of just sitting there. I don't know how it looks on Miami radar because I haven't
Can't
looked at
really
that
see much
all
on
day.
it yet.
It
Yeah,
also
the
looks
center
just
circulation
like
is right
nothing
about where
there
my
now.
mouse the center circulation is right about where my mouse cursor is. It's really hard to see because the radar is not as good as the radars we have in the States here in Miami. But the center is right about where my cursor is, and it's just it looks like it's pretty much stalled or trying to stall
Yeah.
here
You
on
think
radar.
so?
It's really
It also
I mean,
looks
it looks like it, but it could be
Oh, dear.
mesovortices. Could be mesovortices just going around the center. I don't know.
I will
It's hard
say,
to tell,
if
and I've
someone-
lost
Yeah,
Miami for the time being as well, so we'll get that as soon as we can.
I will say if someone can pull up the recon data for the AF305 plane, I know Elliot's had some great screen sharing of that.
sure.
You can see the drop zones have been really tightly clustered in the past few drops. So the center potentially isn't moving too much right now as it's trying to maybe slow down a little bit. It's probably just a wobble, though. It's generally expected to continue moving around 8 to 10 miles an hour to the northwest for the time being. The general forecast does not predict stalling at this point in time because there isn't really a collapse in the steering flow around it. So this might be a bit of a wobble trying to force some sort of jog to occur in a certain direction briefly, but it likely is not going to stay at this point.
Yeah,
would
I
have
mean,
to
it stayed at this point for at least a couple of hours, but it's definitely trying to get its move on and trying to shoot where where it's thought to go in the future.
Oh, now, what's happening in this latest visible frame here? I don't know if it's a trick of the light. Let's try and get the infrared on that. I'm just curious what that latest frame was showing. No, nothing much really, actually. But convection still blowing up really high on the
Very
northeastern side, it would appear.
Right
You
now
just-
it looks like it's about 87, 86, something like
You
that.
just wonder how long this will go on for.
Yeah, that convection
Yeah.
is really doing a good job blowing up. near
Yeah,
Grand
yeah, and it's also about to reach Florida. Yeah.
Some of the
Yeah.
higher cloud tops, you're correct, are about to reach Florida. This is going to be a bit
Yes.
of a concern to try to potentially pump up those rainfall totals once you get more actual rainfall at the lower levels of those clouds trying to reach down and fall on land as well. So hopefully we see some dissipation of this soon. But you can't say, fortunately, right now, it isn't the most symmetrical blob of convection that's trying to blow up. Overall, it's more displaced to the north of the center. Still, potentially some impacts from wind shear inhibiting this from getting even more symmetrical and really trying to get its act back together too significantly for the time being.
All right, Isaac, you're showing us this other radar. What can we discern from this, if anything? What's going on with it?
Well,
It's
this
hard
is-
to tell.
This is the Miami radar, and I believe they have it set to new images every two minutes or so. So it looks a lot slower than it actually is moving.
It's
But,
smooth.
I
It's
believe-
really smooth. I've noticed that.
I believe what we're seeing is that the convection is staying north of the center here, and the actual center is still moving. It's just the convection itself to the north isn't. You could see
Is
probably in
that
the last
an
few frames
indication
there.
that it might be being sheared off there at the lower levels as well?
Probably because I could quite clearly see on the lower part of this, especially near the end of the frames here, what appears to be the center is still moving northwest,
Yeah.
like the National Hurricane Center is indicating.
Yeah.
I think it's just the convection itself is being kind of stationary near the center.
So the center really closing in on Bimini now.
Yeah. Also, another question I saw. Anything about the new wave coming off of Africa?
There's not much to look at there just yet. I can assure you of that.
A lot of thunderstorms.
Yeah, that's what I was just thinking.
So I think the question that a lot of people share right now is from Quazzle MT saying, is there a chance for a new eye to form?
I mean,
Yeah, that's what I was saying. I think only if it re-intensifies. I mean, even as a mid category 1, it tried to form an eye 4 times and it couldn't because of the southeastern eye wall just being too weak. I personally don't see it happening, but I mean, anything is possible.
I mean, and again, an eye isn't indicative of how much danger this thing has. I mean, it's still a powerful storm, and eye out of everything is probably not the most important thing to focus on right now.
Yeah, and just to get a full clarification on that, it could be trying to reform fragments of a northern eye wall for the time being. Although we'll probably see it in the latest forecast discussion at around 11 p.m. So a little over 3 hours. It's more of a banding feature, it seems, for the time being. So it's possible that it tries to reform an eye wall within the next 24 to 48 hours before it really starts having a lot more land interaction.
Nonetheless,
but
you look at that, the convection still blowing up enormously, and compared to what it looked like just 6 hours ago, it looked absolutely atrocious back then. It barely looked like a tropical storm, but at this point, it's the kind of convection that you see blowing up in places like the Western Pacific in borderline typhoons. So, yeah, I think that's at least 70 miles an hour.
Yeah, this thing is definitely a pretty good storm when it comes to that. It's been doing pretty well and pulling some tricks up its sleeve.
Let me just read out once again the latest from the National Hurricane Center, because some people may have missed it. At 8 p.m. Eastern Time, the latest update came out not long ago. 25.3 north, 78.9 degrees west puts it 100 miles southeast of Fort Lauderdale and 85 south of Freeport. Maximum sustained winds of 70 miles per hour, moving northwest at 9. Minimum central pressure is 993. Hurricane warning now in effect for Boca Raton to the Volusia-Flagler County line in Florida, Bimini, the Berry Islands, and Grand Bahama Island. That means the hurricane warning for the other locations in the Bahamas has been discontinued. A storm surge watch for Jupiter Inlet, Ponte Vedra Beach. A tropical storm warning for north of Ocean Reef to south of Boca Raton, Lake Okeechobee, and Volusia-Flagler County line to Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. Tropical storm watch extends now up to South Santee River in South Carolina. So the tropical storm watch continues to march north. Expected storm surge Jupiter Inlet to Ponte Vedra Beach 2 to 4 feet. North Miami Beach to Jupiter Inlet 1 to 3.
And also apparently a gust of about 39 miles per hour was just happened in Fort Lauderdale.
Oh, okay.
Oh, wow.
Interesting. And in the northwestern Bahamas could be up to 5 feet of storm surge. And just the rainfall here as well. In the Bahamas, up to 12 inches of isolated maximums. In Cuba still, they're looking at an isolated maximum total of 4. Eastern Florida, 2 to 4 with isolated maximums of 6. Northeast Florida and coastal Georgia, 1 to 3. Carolinas and the Mid-Atlantic, 2 to 5 with isolated maximums of 7. I think it could be a bit higher than that, though. And they've even got southeast New York and much of New England now up on there too. 2 to 4 inches with isolated maximums of 6. Sounds about right.
Another question I just saw, how big can the storm get once it passes through, New England? As we all know, storms tend to get
bigger than it currently is.
I mean, we can't say exactly, but it is generally forecast that the storm should broaden in size as it moves northward and turns post-tropical as it interacts with this trough that's going to pull it northeast nearer on the coastline of the eastern seaboard.
Yeah, I believe that's what storms usually tend to do when they go post-tropical. They expand their wind field quite a bit. And I believe Elliot has some new information on the recon.
Oh.
Elliot?
Oh, you do?
I do. Recon has been investigating the storm over the past several hours, and the vortex data messages have come in, and the Air Force mission has been reporting from their dropsons pressures consistently of around 995 to 996 millibars. And another thing I want to note is,
995.
yeah, 995 to 996. So I think it's still quite a bit weaker than it was this morning, but it could be making a recovery given the convection. And another thing to note about the storm is that it's pretty far north of the storm at the moment, but it's still recording gale force winds. It's a full degree of latitude, almost 2 degrees of latitude north, and they're still recording gale force winds. So
It's like 100
it's definitely
miles.
a sign. It's definitely a sign that the wind field is still there.
Do you have the other recon plane? 'Cause I noticed it's trying to pull some, at least the NOAA 3 plane is trying to pull some extrapolated pressures or flight level pressures in the mid 980s right now.
Yeah, they have a Gulfstream jet out there going around the environment, checking the Gulfstream G-feed. That's a higher level recon. That's around 50 to 60,000 feet.
Oh no,
They're
there's
currently-
also a NOAA 3 right now. It's also doing low level reconnaissance right now too.
Yes, that is
We got
a few-
3 planes in. I noticed the NOAA 3 plane is picking up some lower pressures. I didn't know if you want to bring that up, Elliot.
Yeah, it's
There's a lot
definitely
of
something
planes
that
out
I'm
there.
looking at. It's
There's 2
definitely
that are
something-
inside the storm, I believe, right about now. Elliot?
They've gotten a oh, sorry.
It's definitely something that I'm looking at the moment, and I'm not sure if they've dropped any drop zones into the no. I mean, I'm not sure if the no planes dropped any drop zones, but it would be interesting to see if they do, what kind of pressures they'll find, because I imagine they'll be a little bit lower, given the extrapolated pressures have been a full 10 millibars lower almost than the Air Force plane.
I mean, it's been notable because there's been discrepancy between the Air Force plane and its drop zones that have been dropping in, and the NOAA 3's extrapolated pressures since this morning. So it's gonna be interesting to see, how they really solve that discrepancy that might be occurring in some of their readings that they're getting right now.
Looking close in at the Miami area now, you can see a few showers coming in association with the storm. Moving out west, you can see much light rainfall there, moving through the Everglades and over Marco Island, and then towards Naples, maybe just some light patches. But up towards Lake Okeechobee and definitely further north. Let's see if we can switch radar on that, actually. Where is the next radar? I'm trying to find that.
Well,
That'll be
Will that
Tampa.
happen?
Would be Tampa
Is
and
it
Key
right the
West
way
would
up in
probably be a
Tampa?
good radar. Tampa or Key West would probably be the best radars to use if you're going to look over around Naples.
That's
Yeah,
a massive
another-
rainfall area towards... oh no, it's gone out. Well, no, it's
yeah.
looking interesting. Sorry, this is the area near Port St. Lucie. Some interesting rainfall coming through there as well.
That is.
Yeah,
Wow,
another
that's
question
quite a big field of rain that's going on up there. Those outer bands can still be quite treacherous.
Yeah. Do you remember the flooding in Ato del Rey in the Dominican Republic? This could bring something similar to that.
Maybe.
Yeah. And another question I just saw. What's the Dvorak scale for the storm right now?
Anyone got that?
I don't seem to find it.
I would have no idea on that.
Well, basing on the intensity of the storm, probably it's like T4, T.
I think that's a bit aggressive. I think
Actually, it is according to... Hold on a minute. Nope, oh, sorry, I was looking at the wrong one. According to NOAA right now, it's apparently T3.5.
Yeah, I was
which
just about
corresponds
say that.
to 75 miles an hour, interestingly enough.
Yeah, well, this storm is just 5 miles away, and it could still be intensifying right now. That the blob is still going on, and I can still see some thunderstorm. I can still see a small blob of convection going on, just about southeast of the big blob. It's pulling some reds.
Hold on, what are we talking about now?
And we were
The little blob and the big blob.
we were
No, a blob about southeast of the big blob.
Well, there's that
High 60s right now.
There's some tiny little things going on there, yeah, I suppose.
Yeah, never mind. It's actually pulling something about.
Is there any significance to that?
Well, no, but it seems to be forming. So, there's just there's the line of like thunderstorms going on.
There's a little line.
High 70s. Yeah, just southeast of the big blob. I don't know if that could mean anything.
How scientific. No, I can see
Yeah.
that trailing line there to the southeast now that you mention it, looking further south there. That's over, getting towards Cuba even, so that's probably why they've still got the rain numbers on for Cuba up to 4 inches.
Nathan, just to let you know, they had found the Recon NOAA plane had found a pressure of 991 millibars.
Oh,
So we are still talking borderline hurricane by the sounds of these observations.
Yes, in comparison to what Elliot just talked about, the Air Force Recon had found what was it again? It was 993 or 994. The most recent Recon NOAA P3 Orion low-level reconnaissance has found a surface level pressure or sea level pressure of 991 millibars.
That's interesting to hear.
Yeah, earlier I saw that there was this reckon that thought there was a 986, which could translate to about a 988 because it was extrapolated. So I would say it's about a 990 right now.
Now, Elliot, you're taking a look at this radar, and would you agree with Isaac's prognosis earlier?
I definitely would. It's kind of not really forming an eye just yet, but you can see some banding. There's definitely rainfall going on in Florida right now because you can see that there's a lot of cells up here from the outer bands, as well as there's a special marine warning here. And I think that maybe for some waterspouts, I haven't checked on that. But yeah, there's definitely some rainfall impacts to land that are ongoing. And some of these heavier bands, you could see totals start to add up pretty quick. So keep an eye out for flash flooding.
Let's just follow up on that one and see if there is a waterspout. Yes, a line of showers capable of producing waterspouts were located along a line extending from 40 nautical miles east of Delray Beach to 29 miles east of Lauderdale by the Sea to 7 miles east of Surfside, moving west at 35 knots. That's 40 miles an hour. So waterspouts in that area, basically. I think we know all about waterspouts. They can easily overturn boats and create locally hazardous seas. Seek safe harbor immediately.
We have a viewer video from Fort Lauderdale.
I would like
Elliot or Isaac want to pull it up.
I already have it on. I already have it on screen here, and this is a video one of our viewers in the chat room here sent us from Fort Lauderdale, Florida, not too long ago. I believe about 10 minutes ago or so, 10-15 minutes ago. And take a look at the flooding here.
Show them. Oh, it's already getting big. Isn't that a river?
Is it?
I'm not too familiar. Actually, no, yeah, that looks to be a river, but these are the conditions.
That's not flooding.
These are the conditions currently in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, from one of our viewers. If you have any videos like this or any images you want to share and you're in a safe position to do so,
Looks calm
keep in
there,
mind.
really.
If you're in a safe position to do so, please send us some videos if you can.
Absolutely.
If you're able to.
Yeah, I'm actually gonna ask my uncle who's in Hollywood right now for some videos. So I'll be right back.
If you've got any questions for us whilst we're on the air for this 2-hour period, please send us a message. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. It will light up for us. Some people are laughing at the river so-called flooding. Let's see what else we've got then. What about the Invest? Has it organised better? Let's take a look at the wide shot once again on the GOES 16 satellite, the Atlantic Ocean. And you can see it once again. The Invest, is it even an official Invest yet, by the way?
Not yet.
Not yet. So it's just
it
an area of interest, but who cares about terminology? The area of interest there near the Leeward Islands, a few thunderstorms associated with it, some messy little bits of rotation here and there, nothing really organised, but What are the National Hurricane Center seeing in this at the minute?
I don't know. Also, I saw something in chat about a tornado warning. Can somebody confirm about that?
There does not seem to be a tornado warning near Isaias. Isaias's. Oh my gosh.
Isaias.
Take your time. Take your time. Take your time. It's okay.
Isaias. There we go.
There we go.
We
There
do
we
not
go.
seem to see it near the storm's center, but
No.
not quite sure on that just yet.
Another question.
Possibility. But I mean, there's no like too many rain bands of Isaias going straight to Florida to cause like a significant tornado formation. But of course, there's always a possibility. The terrain is plain. It's practically favorable for anything. But
Sorry about this, guys, but Invest 94L has formed just now.
Right as we're
Wow.
talking about it.
Right on
Kudo,
cue.
let's go.
Well, that's another one for our time now. Another invest for this season, this insane season.
So there it is,
This is insane.
22.5
We're
north,
just starting
63
August.
west.
Yeah.
No, wait, let me take a look.
Models that
How
have been
can
trying
you-
to push development on this are still looking generally to the 3-day time frame. Unfortunately, it shouldn't be a significant land impactor like we've been seeing with the last couple storms. The GF has actually backed off on it in the 18Z run, even though it's much more supportive in the prior days. And I'm pretty sure I'll take a look at the European real quick as well. It tries to develop it actually more than the GFS now, but doesn't fully do so. So another invest in the basin to keep an eye out on for the days 2 to 5 mark to see if we get some development coming in.
It's still not on the cone for the NHA.
Yep. And someone said, will it become Josephine? To answer that question, it has a 30% chance of development into a tropical cyclone, so a tropical depression, within the next 48 hours, and a 60% chance of becoming a tropical depression in the next 5 days right now.
Keep
so
watching.
I mean, I don't know, but it's already looking a little bit better than Isaias. I'm not gonna lie to you.
No. You can't say things like that.
Just take
We can't, of
take a look
course.
at the. You can just take a look at the NOAA satellite thing. It just looks
16, you mean?
kind of better.
I don't think so.
no, not yet. I mean, Josephine is the next name, but doesn't mean that 94L is going to be Josephine.
I mean, of course, it's
Right.
not. Of course, it's not Isaias, but it's looking like. Of course, looks to be deceiving.
Isaac, any
But
more
it's-
news from the radar scope right now? Anything else that you've noticed?
Well, first of all, I'd like to apologize for that little blooper I had there for a second. But looking at radar, it looks about the same as it did when he last caught up with me here. The convection appears to be kind of stationary just north of the actual center of circulation there. The actual center seems to be still moving northwest here, as you could especially probably see in the later frames there. Perhaps one of the meso vortices of the center there, perhaps being seen by the Miami radar.
Is this
But,
suggesting that maybe after all that high cloud clears up again, it's going to be left at another, exposed center again in a few hours?
It could
Well,
happen.
looking at radar, it appears that that's the case. It's still being sheared at this point in time, unless the center reforms over this kind of blob of convection. I don't,
No.
personally, at least,
It's
I
not
don't see
going
it
to do
reforming
that.
into a hurricane.
It's far too established to relocate its center.
I do have some news.
Go ahead.
ATCF has updated for the 0Z outlook, and 10L, Tropical Depression 10L in the far eastern Atlantic is down to 25 miles an hour. So
Wow.
I think that
It's
it's the
gone.
beginning of the end
Long
for
gone.
this little
No, I
tropical
It's the
think
end of the
I
end.
think the end started long ago.
yeah,
Yeah,
I mean,
if you look at it like satellite, it's essentially completely gone
It
now.
is
It's been
gone.
dead.
something extraordinary would have to happen for them to not downgrade this to a remnant low at the 10 p.m.
Yeah,
or
I'm surprised they
11 p.m.
didn't. Surprised they didn't. The next one
I'm trying to
from
load, okay, here it is.
Yeah, it would be the
Okay,
11 p.m. Eastern.
can you load my screen for the
What are we looking at
infrared
now?
for 10?
Oh,
It's basically gone.
that's Tropical Depression 10. There we go.
It's
So,
gone.
Nothing much to see there.
That
Nope.
really isn't even something
gone.
to. It's just a cluster of clouds right now.
Yeah,
nothing.
it looks kind
Hi,
of like
Shears.
what 90W looked last week on the Western Pacific.
Look how beautiful it looks like. Impressive. Tropical Depression 10 making
There's
making
just one tiny dot of like light blue, which means low 20s. Which
But
is
I'm asking
yeah.
you guys, we're putting attention to inexistent tropical depression. I mean, there's nothing.
There's nothing.
really
There's
there.
just nothing else. It's gone. It has vanished. I see
And,
nothing else.
They're still referring to Tropical Depression 10 there, which is looking pretty awful. We're back to Isaias on your screen at this point. The convection continuing to flare up just to the northeast of the supposed center, which we don't exactly know where it is now because it's underneath that cloud and it's not so clear on radar even. But we think it's closing in on Bimini very shortly, and a hurricane warning is still in effect there. If you've got any questions, send them in. Start your message with Force 13, all in text. It will light up. Just like Mason has done. Could there be any more tropical waves coming off the coast of Africa? Oh, there's going to be plenty more tropical waves, but whether any of them form, well, I'm sure some will.
That's what happens. I mean, throughout, especially this time. Well, not this time even. There shouldn't be that many that form, but especially in August and September, it's very common to see a bunch of waves and one or two maybe form.
Okay, so there's an enormous wave right now in the Central Africa. If I could get if you can see that, it's just enormous.
That is a big wave, but no matter how big those waves get over the African continent, the real test is in the first 2 days after it leaves the coast, because even the most impressive looking waves can completely fizzle out just off the coast of Western Africa. So this is the breeding ground for those long tracking hurricanes when we get them. And who knows at this stage whether any of the ones that we're looking at will develop into a significant hurricane, but nothing's on the models, so I highly doubt it.
Yeah, and we got a flow in the chat now. An update from someone on Hutchinson Island, which is one of those island chains kind of on the coast of Florida. It's a bit north of West Palm Beach, saying that they're starting to get some outer bands from the system right now, and a plethora of questions as well. Someone saying, could the system, when it's post-tropical, come up and impact Maine? I don't know if you can pull up the 5-day cone and someone can talk about this a little bit as well. But,
they don't think it'll be tropical.
Yeah, but just because it isn't tropical doesn't mean that the area can't see impacts. Right now, Bangor, Maine is forecast to potentially get some stronger winds and 2 to 4 inches of rain.
It won't be a tropical storm, it will simply be storm.
Yeah. Just like 10 hours right now.
Yep. Can Miami get 60-mile-an-hour gusts?
Yeah, I mean, it's possible, especially if this thing, as models suggest, does go back, well, as the NHE suggests, goes back to being a hurricane shortly. It's a possibility, definitely, and especially when it gets at its closest pass, it is possible.
I would say notably, Miami's been bouncing around on their odds of tropical storm force winds with this system. They've been bouncing near 40%, back down to 13%, back up to near 40. Right now, they're at 21%. So they could see some gusts near tropical storm strength. And if the storm takes a bit of a jog to the west, you could have some higher odds of tropical storm conditions, at least in terms of wind speeds. But
Miami at 21%.
Yeah, they're expecting that because of the displacement of the system.
I'm sure we've still got it in the 40s on our graphic.
The 5 p.m. update from the NHC has it at 21%. It's been really bounding around. They've been trying to ascertain the exact odds, but they are under a tropical storm warning. So National Hurricane Center is still expecting the possibility of tropical storm conditions in Miami. And if you're living there and watching this, you should be preparing and treating the situation as such.
Give another mention to the rainfall expectations all along the East Coast then. Significant rainfall expected and over a large area, and increasing on the forecast as the track shifts a little bit west, particularly in Florida.
Yeah, I see another question. Does it still have a chance of going straight up at the Chesapeake?
I mean, the Chesapeake Bay, if we were to go straight up it, it would have to go, north-northwest, really. And at that point,
No.
when it's crossing that latitude, it's going to be moving north-northeast or northeast. So the answer, if it'll go up it, is no, but it could cross over it potentially if it stays
More likely than not.
Slightly west. Yeah. I mean, right now, the 3-day spot is basically right over the Chesapeake Bay, or very close in proximity to it. So it is something you have to watch out for, and those rainfall totals around the Chesapeake Bay, potentially up to 4 to 6 inches.
Let's see what we've got here then. Where is 94L expected to go? Stay out to sea or move towards land? It's mostly
Definitely
expected to be out to sea. The only place it might end up affecting, and it's a big might and probably not, is Bermuda.
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be another storm in the middle of the sea. It's not going to be something to worry about too much if you're especially living in the U.S. Just it's going to be another fish storm, essentially.
And that's still if it forms, Some of the model reports actually weakened since earlier today. The GFS and European have backed off on it a good amount, and the CMC is trying to pick up on it, but does so only very weakly. For example, the German model is a bit more supportive, but again, not by much. So, we're still looking to see if this forms in the first place, and that's still not necessarily clear. It's right now 60%. That's a 40% chance that it doesn't even become a tropical depression.
And the convection is looking more odd as time goes on here, as we've been observing this from when it first blew up about 3 hours ago. Right now, it's starting to wane on the peripherals, and the center area is still blowing up, but in a little bit of a smaller area than previously, only slightly. That really is its life right there. It's got to keep blowing that convection to survive right now, I would say.
Yeah, it definitely does. And it for the past couple hours, it's been doing a pretty decent job of it. But don't expect this to continuously blow up. It will. We don't know how long this burst will be blowing up. It could be going on for a couple more hours, or it could be
for the next 3 days.
I think something notable with it right now, though, is most of that convection is still displaced off to the north and east of the center. It's not too symmetrical. The southern half of this all is still quite bare, although it's definitely a bit better looking than it was earlier today when there was only slight convection to the east of the center. So even though we have a burst of convection coming in right now, really since a little bit before we went live, a little over an hour ago, the effects of wind shear are still quite apparent on this system.
And again, you can see how the wind shear is doing it there. Sorry, that just stopped there. Let's just try that again. So you can see the bands, they all rotate round the center. So you've got this one which is spiraling out somewhere. Then you've got this one which is coming in much more towards the center. And then we imagine the center is somewhere around here. And then you've got this band, which really should be right the way over there, which is being sheared well away towards the northeast. And the shear is sort of making it as if the center should actually be here, but it isn't. So there's a disconnect there, and that is what might stop this storm from intensifying much more.
Yeah, and overall, it's still quite small. So when you have, moderate to stronger wind shear, it's still around 20 to 25 knots or so at the mid levels. It can be very inhibitive to a storm, especially when its structure isn't extremely well defined, like we're seeing with Isaias right now.
If it gets an exposed center, would the shear weaken it? And if so, would it wobble west or jog west? Well, whether a center of circulation is exposed doesn't really control the direction of the storm, and the wind shear would do its job, and then it would be an exposed center. But the weaker storms are more likely to be influenced by the ridging, so that would push it further towards the west in theory, but maybe not in practice.
Yeah, usually a rule of thumb with most systems, there's of course some exceptions to that rule. Of course, one of them being Hurricane Hannah about a week ago.
Yeah.
That was that was an exception to that because usually with the stronger storm, you would see it go more northerly. But in that case, with Hannah, the stronger the storm got, the more south it would go. But generally, the rule of thumb: the more strong the storm is, the more north it's going to go. The weaker the storm is, the more south or west it's going to go. It's generally a rule of thumb in terms of storms being strong and weak.
Yeah, and there's a question we should go over briefly because this will be quite significant if the system actually moves in the cone a bit to the west of the exact forecast track right now. Will land interaction with Florida significantly weaken Isaias? I think, Isaac, you can go over this as well.
Well, I'm not really too the best in terms of the geography for Florida here. I think is Mike still here in the call?
Yes.
Is he still here? If you want to go ahead and talk about the storm's interaction with Florida, because you'll be more qualified to answer that, I imagine, than I would, because I don't live in Florida. If you would like to go over that, please.
Yes.
Oh, yeah, of
exactly
course,
what
sure.
we can add.
Well, if the storm makes landfall in Florida, well, if you don't mind, I would like to give some other examples, like back to 2004 with Hurricane Charlie. Of course, this is not a Category 4 at landfall. Well, won't be, hopefully not. No, it's not going to happen. But when it went over Florida and it exited, Nathan, if I'm not mistaken, it exited the state as a Cat 2, correct?
Oh, now you're testing. I can't remember.
Well,
a 1 or 2.
The point being is Florida's fairly flat, and the ground is typically saturated with humidity, and
Of course.
it won't weaken a lot, and if that, probably even none, because this is such a big, broad system that it really won't see weakening. As with Tropical Storm Faye, that there were some rumors that it may have intensified to a hurricane, but the NHC official reanalysis said that it didn't.
Just to confirm,
However,
you're talking about the one of 2008 and not this year, yeah?
Yeah, Faye of 2008. That storm maintained its intensity over land for quite some time, especially as it went over the Everglades, which is a warm, saturated, humid environment, which, if anything, could actually help intensify the storm. Now, that I don't see that happening with this system. However, I do not see land disrupting the system. Not much. No, I don't see it.
I mean, right now it's supposed to hug the coastline, make a very close approach to landfall.
Matthew vibes right there, at least in terms of its track. Won't be as strong.
It's going to depend a lot on whether or not it moves a couple miles inland with the core center of the storm, or if it stays just offshore or on the shore. Because if it moves a bit inland, even though it's much more flat terrain and a bit more saturated and humid as well, without having the center of the circulation sucking up warm waters from the ocean, it's definitely an inhibiting factor for the system. So it would induce some marginal weakening, but because the system isn't a very powerful hurricane, it doesn't have as far down to go. And if you're talking about land interaction further up as well, down the forecast, we're getting potentially towards the Carolinas, it'll also be an inhibitor, but at that point as well, some baroclinic forcing as it turns post-tropical could try to keep its intensity up from going down too drastically at that point in time.
Probably.
Exactly, going back to what Strat said, it's a much more broad system, and it's already somewhat discombobulated. So, like Strat was saying, when it goes over land, it could actually, it won't disrupt it not nearly as much as it would as a tight and compact core hurricane. However, this system could definitely expand in a wind size. We could see Nathan, if it were to. Oh, I'm losing my train of thought here. Sorry, I'm just looking at the radar. I don't know. It looks like
there it is
Shear.
in front of us, definitely.
Yeah, there's Shear, but I don't know. The system's just so hard.
Cesar, go ahead.
I was trying to mention as well about Tropical Storm Julia in 2016, with the example of very humid environment in the Florida, because Julia formed overland in Florida when, practically any cyclone in the history, at least in the Atlantic, has formed overland. And we can take an example as well of Hurricane Andrew back in 1992 when it made landfall in Florida. Yeah, because Andrew
Oh,
didn't
in that it didn't
weaken-
weaken very much.
Oh,
Exactly.
yeah.
Okay.
That's
Yeah.
You know,
right.
although I do think it's important just to make the overall note that generally, when tropical cyclones move over land, the lack of access to the core of the warm sea surface temperatures that fuel them generally leads to at least marginal weakening, depending on the terrain. Sometimes it can be much more extreme if you have a stronger storm going over Hispaniola per se. You know, sometimes that even knocks off 3 or 4 categories depending on the exact strength of the storm. But with this system, it's going to probably be more marginal just because it isn't as powerful and its structure isn't as well defined and able to be disrupted further than it already has been by wind shear and dry air.
Could it shift east at all overnight?
I would-
Well, models say that it could happen.
I wouldn't bet on it. The models have been kind of flip flopping the past few days here, whether or not it's going to go more west than forecast or more east than forecast or stay with forecast. I would say it's possible, but I wouldn't put I wouldn't bet on it doing that type of track.
Another question:
Well,
when
yeah,
will that
models
big
have been
rain
thinking,
band
yeah.
impact Grand Bahama? Well, it's creeping closer at this point, but it's taking its sweet time to get there.
Actually, how fast is it moving?
Not very fast at all.
Yeah,
So
that's
I can
something
discern
I
from
can
that.
assume.
I mean, the 6-hour average as of 8 p.m. for movement speed was northwest at 9 miles an hour, but the
Yeah.
latest reconnaissance
Seems to be-
aircraft passes were indicative of a much slower moving storm trying to wobble a bit, perhaps. It moving extremely slowly, if not near stalling motion for the past hour or so. So we're gonna have to wait and see what the next recon pass says. There's actually 2 recon planes going through the center in the near future, and I'm sure Elliot will keep us up to date with that to give us a better view if the systems really start to move again to the northwest.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
another question. Oh, go.
No, it's fine. You can go.
Okay, so another question that I'm asking myself. How's the Kelvin wave gonna? Because I don't know much. How's the Kelvin wave gonna affect the basin?
Anyone?
I mean,
I can go over
You
that.
can answer your own question, Alan, if you can do the honors.
Well, the thing is that I'm asking
No,
because I
go
don't
ahead,
know.
Elliot. You were gonna speak.
Oh yeah, the Kelvin wave right now it's sort of heading into a more suppressed phase, and should keep the Atlantic relatively quiet after this AOI for the next couple of weeks. Can't rule out a weak storm, but it's going to get more favorable toward the end of August. So it's just going to be something to keep an eye on as we head into the depths of peak season.
The depths.
So open Atlantic storms are not expected to happen. Well, unless it's a weak storm throughout most of August, right?
I mean, not necessarily, because, even though climatologically, because of the Kelvin waves, we could see more suppressed activity and formation odds, it doesn't mean that significant storms can't still form. If you want an example of a strong storm forming in what's been so far, at least a more suppressive environment, just take a look at Hurricane Douglas last week. We've had a very weak season so far and heavy suppressive activity in the Eastern Pacific, only 4 named storms in August now. But you still had a very powerful category storm form regardless of that and other climatological factors that you would consider to weigh down the basin as a whole.
Also, let's not forget the La Nina that's currently going on, as well as it's just cooler in general.
Usually the Eastern Pacific does get at least one Douglas-type storm, though, that goes right through the Eastern Pacific as a Category 4. Very rarely affect land.
Yeah.
It's also
That's true. Well, I think the Pacific needs a break. I mean, we've seen lots of activity in the Eastern Pacific since 2014 at least, and nonstop. And well, so I think it's a relief, at least for this year, that the Eastern Pacific is not having too much activity for now. But of course, as you mentioned, Nathan, the Hurricane Douglas Category 4, pretty strong storm. Even that an inactive season could develop those storms like that. I mean, I remember in 2010, Hurricane Celia, Category 5, pretty strong storm, by the time one of the top 10 strongest ever. And So yeah, I mean, the Eastern Pacific could also give us a surprise. Not doesn't mean always has to be active, but of course, I think a break is the best for everybody for now.
Something is good, I would say.
There's a comment there as we look at Isaac's screen of the radar. Yeah, don't move it. It's gone. Isaac, come on. I'm in the
Oh,
western
again, sorry.
part
There
of
we go.
Grand Bahama. On the screen, it's showing that convection is happening over us, but nothing is happening. No wind or rain. It's just cloudy.
Yeah, well,
I'm
you know,
gonna
I
check on
think
the
important
infrared.
Looking
indicator.
at radar, it looks like you guys are kind of in a lull in activity here. It depends. If you're probably in the northern part or the eastern part of the island, you're probably not seeing much. There's cloudy rain. As you can see on the radar of Miami. Now, this is not the best radar to use, of course, to see Grand Bahama Island because it's so far away from Grand Bahama. But there's a little burst of rain there on the last frame. Near Freeport, but parts of Freeport, of course, don't seem to be getting rainfall. So at this point in time, Grand Bahama is not really getting much in the way of rainfall at this point in time from this hurricane. I mean, not hurricane, this tropical storm now.
Nearly a hurricane.
I think the important thing to point out, because they're probably looking at the infrared imagery, which shows really cold cloud tops of -70s over large portions of the Grand Bahamas. Those are indicative of the temperatures of the cloud tops and how far those are going up into the atmosphere. So colder cloud tops indicate clouds stretching further up into the atmosphere. Those don't necessarily indicate rainfall occurring under those as well. So keep that in mind when you're looking at the infrared imagery. If you want to take a look at rainfall for your exact location, it's always better to use radar to see the rain rates.
Yeah,
Question
and
here.
Something in. Okay, go on.
From where did that come from? From Bossman1234. Where is the Gulf Stream? And it might sound like a very simple question, but there are divisions, and usually the Gulf Stream follows this line round here, round the coast of Florida, sort of almost misses that out, goes up beyond there. It sort of ends at Bimini, which is just about where the storm's about to reach, and then once it enters that area, we expect by this point the storm will be in the very warm waters and potential for intensification right through there.
Yeah, something interesting I'm taking a look at is that the HUD towers are going northeast, almost like if they were going straight for the Avaco Islands.
Almost.
There's some wind shear impacting the system still, and that's why a lot of the activity is still being pushed off to the northeast. Again, for people that are coming in, because there's always a flow of new people coming in and out of the stream, there's still some significant southerly shear of around 20 to 25 knots impacting the system at the mid-levels, and that's pushing a lot of the convective activity north and east of the center of the storm, preventing the structure from becoming as symmetrical as it was about 24 to 48 hours ago. And it's fortunate that we're seeing an inhibiting factor like that that's caused some weakening as it's approaching land.
It's
Sure.
impossible to disagree, really, that the convective tops now are east or away from the center of the storm.
You know what?
And I would imagine pretty soon, in the next hour or so, as it's still, assuming it's still moving northwest, that part of the center might become exposed again.
Yep. You're not going to really be able to see consistent cloud tops and convective activity stay sustained around the center of the system fully in a much more symmetrical way until the shear lessens when the system tries to move.
Well, it's not.
Picked up by this trough. When it starts moving in the same direction as the upper level winds and mid-level winds, which will occur in about 36 hours or so now, it's going to have a window of about 24 hours or so before land interaction really starts occurring between Florida and the Carolinas, when it has some more favorable conditions with sea surface temperatures and wind shear to try to at least maintain intensity or strengthen slightly.
Yeah, something interesting I'm taking a look at is that because of the wind shear, it looks like it's rotating clockwise, which is something very odd.
I can see why you think that.
Yeah, it just looks like. Of course, it's not, but it gives that optical illusion. It just feels so weird.
That would be the outflow of the storm.
Yeah, which is
Isaac,
because of the wind shear.
were you going to show us a typical Gulf Stream just there?
Oh yes, but I don't want to interrupt.
No,
But
go ahead.
here's the typically where the Gulf Stream is located there. You can see the red, where it says like 1.5 to above there. Those are the currents from the Gulf Stream there, and you can see generally where it usually goes, the Gulf Stream. And this is from back in 2016. So of course it shifts and changes occasionally over time. So don't take this as gospel per se, but this is generally where the Gulf Stream is located at, for those of you guys who were curious earlier on that question.
And it is like an actual stream, and you can see there the meanders as it goes further up. And like real world streams, you get, over time, the water changes course, and the Gulf Stream also does that.
Exactly.
And
So
that's
this is
also one of the
again from 20. This is from 2016. Like I said earlier, so this is not current. Look at the Gulf Stream, so don't take this as gospel. But this is just a basic, idea for those of you guys who were wondering earlier about where the Gulf Stream is and all that. This is for you guys who were wondering.
Someone's asking a question. I think it's going to be important to talk about this briefly, just to really more disavow the odds, because it is quite unlikely. Someone's asking if it stalls, could it rapidly intensify? The issue is it's still, the longer it stalls, the longer it's going to be under higher wind shear. So the odds of that would immediately get shot down a bit. And then you're also dealing with upwelling that would occur from it staying in the same location for too long. Drier air is still trying to inhibit the structure, as it's still near some land masses. It can ingest those into the system. So stalling would definitely not help it. And odds of rapid intensification are extremely low, under 10%.
I'm gonna go check on their ships RII.
Now, I have something to say about ATCF. They have updated for Tropical Storm Isaias. They have kept it at 60 knots, which is 70 miles an hour, and they've kept the pressure at 993 millibars. So not really a surprise there. It looks like it's been holding intensity based off recon data, which we should be getting past any minute now, so I'll keep you updated on that as well. But just a quick update.
So that's more news from there. Let's just try and get the latest out of Key West right now. I believe this one of the storm's bands is passing pretty close, trying to get to radar now. It's not showing up. I had it just a minute ago. But apparently there's a little rain cell moving past Key West at this point. I was going to go there, but unfortunately it's not cooperating all of a sudden. So keep sending in your questions for the next 20 minutes as we continue this 2-hour broadcast live on Force 13. After we've finished here, you can watch our 24-hour stream, automated service, youtube.com/Force13/live. And of course we've got all our social media platforms and our community on Discord. Discord.gg/Force13.
Yeah, and
just very quick, here are the ships RII probabilities, if anybody wanted them.
In summary,
very low chances.
Very low chances.
Yeah, exactly. It does say 10% for 25 knots in 24 hours. And it says 8.2% for 45 knots in 36 hours. So yeah, that's it.
8% chance of that, so I wouldn't be too worried about that happening.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I just got the radar you were looking for earlier, Nathan.
Yep, there it is. We've got it on the screen here.
This is off of the National Weather Service radar, so it's not the best radar. I don't have I wasn't prepared enough, so I don't have my high resolution radar out yet. But this is from the National Weather Service, and it gives you the general basic idea of what Nathan is saying. Some little bursts of rain coming over Key West there and over that far western island there. I forgot that island name. I forgot it. If those of you in the chat remember the name, please tell me. That'd be great. I know what that island is. I just completely forgot the name. So if any of you guys know the name of this, remember the name of this better than I do, that would be greatly appreciated.
Yeah, and a general question about cyclones in general, as you know, we're waiting for some more questions to come in the recon pass. Someone saying, has a storm ever had cloud tops past negative 90 degrees? And Nathan, you're a huge historian. It typically happens
I think it does.
Western half of the Pacific, mainly.
That and mostly sheared systems typically, right?
A few sheared
Yeah.
systems, especially in the Australian region, you can get cloud tops that go well above -100, but it's not particularly
I think the
useful.
coldest ever were Kamuris last year at about 109.
Negative 109. But yeah,
negative 109 from Kamuri last year.
Yeah, there is that argument, and I don't really dispute that. But the one of the other storms, oh, what was it? The previous record holder, at any rate, using geostationary
Nora.
satellite, was the same temperature as Kamuri with the geostationary satellite. So, if Hilda had the better satellites as well with it, who knows what that temperature might have been.
Well,
Yeah, generally the storms with the highest cloud tops, or coldest cloud tops, I should say, are generally in the South Pacific. I don't know the exact details of why that is. If we had Hank or Devin here, they're probably going to elaborate detail about that. But unfortunately, we don't have them in this stream. And also, I wanted to make a mention quickly. That island that we were talking about, me and you, Nathan, is called Dry Tortugas Island. So
That's the one.
Thank you, viewers, for reminding us what that's called. Thank you.
And
That's
someone
the one.
asking a question in general as well about cloud tops, just to really explain, what does -100 mean? That means the temperature of the cloud tops. When you're saying -100, that means -100 degrees Celsius. And that's really indicative. The colder a cloud top is, the further up in the atmosphere it's reaching. And if you have a really well-defined tropical cyclone, with an eye wall, colder cloud tops around an eye wall are indicative of a strong system. Of course, warmer cloud tops around an eye wall would be more indicative of a weakening system.
All we're seeing here on the satellite imagery is basically it's split into a color chart, and that's the higher cloud tops, which at this area of the world is definitely the very high latitudes. I think -80s is something like 40,000 feet. I can't remember now. But the higher the cloud tops, the colder the cloud tops, the higher they are in the atmosphere, because the satellite is detecting the temperatures and not the actual heights. So what that also means is that at higher latitudes towards the poles, you'll see the temperatures get much cooler there as well. So in some ways you can actually, and indeed quite often they do, measure temperatures on the ground from satellites too.
What was the storm in 1993? There was an extra tropical that had Category 5 barometric pressure.
1993.
The storm in 1993.
Oh, we're talking about that extratropical storm.
The Brea
Yeah,
storm.
the Brea
Yeah.
storm, man.
How cold were those cloud tops?
Probably not
Well-
very. We don't really know.
Yeah.
But let's get on to see if there's any more questions at this point. We're here for another just over 15 minutes, so keep them coming in. Start your message with Force 13 all in text. There isn't actually any just right now, but I'm sure we'll get plenty more. So let's just reiterate the warnings from the National Hurricane Center at this point. Tropical storm. I've lost my train of thought now on this pronunciation. Indeed, Isaias. Expected to re-strengthen according to the National Hurricane Center. They think it will become a hurricane overnight whilst it approaches the southeast coast of Florida. That's their headline. 70 miles an hour, pressure 993. Hurricane warning remains in effect for Boca Raton to the Volusia-Flagler County line in Florida, and also for Bimini, the Berry Islands, and Grand Bahama Island. That means that the other islands that had the hurricane warnings until 8 p.m. Eastern have now been allowed to expire. A storm surge watch for Jupiter Inlet to Ponte Vedra Beach, a tropical storm warning for north of Ocean Reef to south of Boca Raton, Lake Okeechobee, and Volusia-Flagler County line to Ponte Vedra Beach, Florida. A tropical storm watch now extends as far north as South Santee River in South Carolina. Plenty more comments coming in here. Let's start with what are your thoughts on impacts to Charleston, South Carolina?
Now, sorry to interrupt, but Recon has made the pass.
Oh, damn.
And
Good.
the Air Force reconnaissance plane has found an extrapolated pressure of 993 millibars. So we'll wait for the drop zone to come on that one, but it's a little lower than the other passes. That's something to note.
Interesting.
Yeah. I mean, it's indicative of a system trying to stall out, at least in weakening, or try to maintain itself as we see this convective blow up go on. I don't know, Nathan, if you can pull up, or anyone, a quick loop of the past 6 hours or so as this was blown up, because if you do that, you can really see the initial blow of convection, and then also see it start to get torn off to the northeast of the system as well.
I think Isaac's on it.
Trying to. My Wi-Fi has been kind of slow recently because we had a bad storm move on through here, but I'll get back to you with that in a little bit.
Yeah. Someone's asking, how long do you think it could maintain its status if it goes back to hurricane strength while going up the coastline, Nathan?
Not very long. It could even be one of these storms that goes in and out of hurricane status and up and down all the time. It could be like that. Some models have been suggesting it.
It's definitely a possibility. It's very uncertain. The storm throughout its entire lifespan has always just thrown curveballs at us, and so we're always quite uncertain of what it's going to do next.
I think the track forecast, though, is getting pretty clear now.
Yeah, I agree, but the intensity is still quite varied.
Yeah, I mean, you're correct. It's always been a tricky one to forecast for intensity, at least for the National Hurricane Center and the computer models. I would note, though, that no matter what's happening with the storm exactly, if you're under a tropical storm watch or warning, if you're under a hurricane warning or watch, act as if you're going to be impacted by a system with that strength. Even if you get a slight miss or not the worst conditions, it's always better to have your hurricane plan active and making sure that you're staying prepared and safe and up to date with the latest information from your local officials than to not prepare at all.
Yeah, another question I see is, could this hit Europe as an extratropical?
I beg your pardon?
Could this hit Europe as an extratropical?
Europe?
It can happen,
Well,
I guess.
it's not left the Americas yet.
Yeah, that's true.
I
guess.
Go for it.
Yeah, I guess it can. It could happen. It can't happen. It just that shouldn't be what we're focusing on right now, because it would probably be as a very weak system if it was extratropical, in my opinion. But it could happen. But again, this thing is about to impact the coast of the United States as an actual storm. So I feel like that's probably the part that should be focused on a lot more.
Yeah, if you want to talk anywhere around 4 to 5 days with this system right now, it's generally forecast by models that after it turns post-tropical in the northeast United States or near the northeast United States, that'll get absorbed up into this trough that's going to be picking it up to the northeast. So it won't be a discernible system according to computer models anywhere near Europe.
That's also true. And just another comment, it's been a while since we last talked about it, the Invest 94L that was recently designated as well, looking at that on the satellite imagery, the wide shot here. It's the central system, the eastern one, which was Tropical Depression 10. You see it at the beginning of the loop, but it's all gone by the end of it. But 94L, guys, your thoughts?
I mean, models have been kind of persistent on wanting this to turn into at least perhaps tropical depression here. In terms of land impacts, like you said earlier, Nathan, at this point, really, the only area that's going to be threatened by this invest, if it does end up becoming a tropical depression strength storm or stronger than that, probably would be Bermuda, the island of Bermuda. But they are used to storms like this, and they have a strong building code, so I'm sure they'll do just fine if it does end up impacting them later down the road. But it's definitely possible for it to form into at least a tropical depression strength storm over the next few days here.
Yeah, and just going off of that real quick, there's also a question saying, could the invest impact Isaias? The area of influence from the depression is relatively small in terms of outward from its current convective activity, just because it is very weakly organized for the time being. So you shouldn't see any impacts from the depression, say, upper level shear influence and stuff, reaching out towards Isaias right now. If this was a very powerful hurricane, it'd be more likely.
It's not that silly a question, but a little bit too far away from each other.
Yeah, no, that's true. If you want an example, it does happen sometimes. Jose, got obliterated by the area of influence of Shear generated by Irma, if I'm not mistaken, in 2017. It went from almost a Category 5 storm, a strong Category 4, down to a tropical storm, mostly due to the shear exhibited from that system as it tried to move northward
And then
away from the Caribbean.
you've got the story of Matthew and Nicole.
Oh, I remember that.
Yeah.
Yeah, Nicole.
Nicole wasn't expected to be anything. Devon was angry when it got named a tropical storm. And then did it become a Category 1?
It became Cat 2, actually.
Cat 2, and then it weakened under Matthew's influence. Then Matthew died, and then Nicole had free reign to become a Category 4 on approach to Bermuda.
Mm-hmm. And I believe the eyewall hit Bermuda as a high-end Category 3 and caused some damage there. So it was quite a system to track there, especially after Matthew happened. Just goes to show you can't take every storm not seriously there.
We've got quite a lot of less on-topic questions, but we may as well take them since there's none others. Why were there 2 Lees in 2017? That was our analysis. It was quite clear. I've not got the time to go through it. I'd recommend looking at our 2017 World Cyclone Report, which did a feature on that. Matthew wants to know if we could do Hurricane 101 type vids.
Never a bad idea.
Never a bad idea, but whenever we get the time for it, since we're always tracking the storms in the first place.
Yeah. May I say something? My uncle from who's in Hollywood, Florida, just told me that there's some not very hard rain and there's some breeze going on, so no strong winds. He just sent me a photo, so let me check it out.
Isaac, in the meantime, go ahead with what you're showing us.
Yeah,
well, I
Fort
got
Lauderdale
my
doing quite fine right now.
Just a minute.
Well, my Wi-Fi finally managed to work here, and I was able to get infrared imagery. This is CONUS imagery, so you can see an imagery every 5 minutes, give or take, off of the GOES 16 satellite. That's why you don't see the left and the right side of your screens cut off, because that would be the mesoscale imagery. Mesoscale imagery, of course, updates every minute, and in some cases, with other special events like Hurricane Dorian last year, updates 30 seconds. But this is 5-minute imagery here over the past 3 hours here, and you can see before that, it really didn't look like much. And honestly, let me go ahead and see if I could stop it in the first frame here. If you were to go and tell me that that's a Category 1 hurricane, I wouldn't believe you at all. I would think that's maybe a tropical wave at most, nothing really to worry about.
Wow.
It looked like garbage earlier, but now with that big burst of convection earlier, it's starting to get a better look to itself. Then you can see the convection trying to fan out to its north there, but the actual center, keep in mind, is right about where my cursor is. If you could barely even see that, It's right about there, and you can see it on radar.
Maybe very slightly further east than that.
And you can see radar here. It's also showing that center circulation is right about there.
Right about that.
Yeah, and you can see what I was talking about earlier with the convection kind of staying fairly stationary around the same general area due to shear still being impacted, still impacting, rather, I should say, the tropical storm at this point in time. Nathan?
I was going to say, Isaac, one of the most fascinating things about that satellite imagery, the infrared, is you can see the convection bubble up around the center and then get blown off to the north and east of the center as an impact of wind shear, if you want to bring that
Straight
up again
away.
briefly, just to really show that, because it is kind of
Yeah,
incredible.
you can see it there. If you want to, if any of you guys are wanting a classic textbook example of what shear can do to a storm, go to the Tropical Archive, Jason's Tropical Archive, and search up Typhoon Crosa 2013. That storm went from a Category 3 hurricane, Category 3 typhoon rather, to a tropical storm in about 24 hours due to high wind shear. It hit like a wall of jet stream wind shear and died because of that.
Let's see. Asking whether we're doing an 11 p.m. update. This will be it for us for this. Well, I don't know actually. Is anyone planning to do a video? We're not doing any other live updates tonight. Our next one will be at some point tomorrow. We've not scheduled it yet, but our team produce video updates as well. I'm not sure if there's any plan for later.
Yeah, I think I'll knock one out if we need to for an update, just to be on the safe side as the system continues to develop and get close to Florida.
Okay.
There's also a question about
yeah.
Maine, if we want to go over
Yeah.
some of the potential northeastern impacts again. Someone's saying they're up in Maine. How should they be preparing for this storm? I don't know, Nathan, if you can pull up the rainfall forecast. For the
Yeah, we've
National
got it right
Hurricane
now
Center.
here. 2 to 4
But in
inches.
general, once you get up to the northeast, I'm sure anyone in the chat that's looking at this from the northeast, or any of our team members in the call that are in the northeast as well, or have been in the past couple of streams, can really indicate to you that the biggest threat from the system as it moves up into the northeast United States will be rainfall. There could still be stronger winds at that time. It's forecast to potentially have maximum sustained winds around 45 to 50 miles an hour right now as it gets to the northeastern United States. But the largest threat's going to be rainfall from 2 to 6 inches overall for the northeastern United States. Those higher amounts further down in southern New England with this system. And a lot of that could be occurring in a relatively short time frame. So if you're living in the northeast, keep an eye out for flash flooding threats associated with the storm.
Any more recon news before we finish up here?
Let me check up.
I do not see any significant recon news, honestly, but
So what kind of winds have they been getting again?
they have not been getting any hurricane force winds, actually, which is good news for the people on land. They've been getting not some, like, the highest that I've seen is 60 knots in either of these flights.
And that's at flight level.
Yeah, and a 60 knot SFMR at the very beginning of one of them. And I wouldn't be surprised if, like, they bump it down to 65 just for the lack of 60 knot evidence that they've found. But I think they're going to roll with ATCF's estimate of 60 knots during
is
the
70 miles an
3Z
hour.
update.
So that update from the National Hurricane Center will come up in 2 hours' time. We'll be long left the scene by then, but maybe Cesar or Strout might be doing an update. I'm not sure yet. I don't think they're sure yet either, but you can of course follow Force 13 on our outlets and of course on our YouTube channel if you're not doing so already. But let's just see if we can get 1 or 2 more questions. Will we be live tomorrow morning again? We'll assess the situation. I think we might be looking at this. Are the A updates, such as 19A only for the location of storms? They're referring to the National Hurricane Center intermediate advisories. They are indeed. They only really do an update on the position, and sometimes, if they're feeling confident, they'll do an update on the intensity. Do we think there's a chance this can go completely out to sea without affecting much land on the US?
You know, we've
think
seen the
there's
model
one model.
spread. And I think Isaac and Elliot and everyone in this call can really attest to this whenever they want to, but the model consensus has been pretty clustered now, very tightly, to some sort of impacts on a potential landfall on the Carolinas now. Once we get up to the Northeast, it's still more unclear, but we're much more confident now, thanks to the computer models, the National Hurricane Center forecasts, that there will unfortunately be at least some land impacts in the United States.
Well, that's it
actually,
for
the
now,
TAV
Alan. Anything else?
Yeah, well, actually, was just looking. Well, this from 18,000 UTC, so it's maybe old now. But the TAVD was actually shown that it would make landfall not in the United States, but in Nova Scotia.
Yeah, that's
Well,
a statistical
that
model.
is a
though, so we can't
possibility,
really put much
though.
stock in it.
But we'll see how it goes. We're out of time here at Force 13 HQ. Thanks so much to the team for helping me out with this live stream. Another one that we've done on Tropical Storm Isaias, which I must be very tired because I'm starting to lose my pronunciation guide on that one already. Even though it's still going strong, and it is a little bit stronger by the looks of things, still on the border with hurricane force winds, even though it looked like it was down and out earlier today. Well, we'll be back again tomorrow with more live updates and video updates on our YouTube channel. And thanks all to our Facebook viewers as well, who are on the simulcast this evening, I believe. You can find us on Facebook and Twitter, search Force 13 all in text. Email us at the bottom of the screen there, and you can also join our Discord server for live chat with the community. That's all for now. We'll see you again tomorrow. Have a good night.